Sprint 4. Starting with the most receptive group for your idea. It's important to get the best start you can get with your startup. To do that, you need to figure out exactly which group of potential customers most want what you will offer. You also need to know exactly why your idea will make them happier than any other group. This sprint enables you to segment potential customers into groups called personas, which in turn helps you more precisely target your sales and marketing efforts. Your competitive advantage comes from how much better you know a customer group than your competitor. So this is important. In our article, All About Personas, we explain how to use your observations and interviews with potential customers to determine the differences in how certain customer subgroups will think and feel about your product, and what they will do with it and say about it. All About Personas, written and read by Derek Lidow.
What is a persona? A persona is a detailed description of a type of customer you may want to serve. Instead of treating all customers as the same, you can improve profits and customer satisfaction by realizing that specific types of people or businesses have their own different needs, problems, or goals. Think of each persona as a character in a story. Think of their background, what they care about, what frustrates them, what they're looking for. This will help you design your product and remove unimportant features and target sales messaging that speaks directly to personas. How to define personas? Personas are defined by what they say and do and how they feel and think relative to how this group of individuals would choose and then use and benefit from your product or service. Personas are usually given a relevant nickname like Jake or Lisa for easy recall. There's usually a summary similar to what is shown or described later on in this blog of how they feel and think, what they say and do relative to your idea, and how these actions, thoughts, feelings, etc. would impact what that persona would find most important in choosing and loving your product or service. In the B2B world, personas are referred to as market segments, and each segment has its own needs and wants relative to a specific product, and that impacts marketing and sales strategies, materials, and actions. Within a given market segment, there will be decision-making and user-operator personas that will categorize the details of how your product or service needs to be designed to be used by workers, as opposed to, say, used by management. There are personas that can be discovered that reflect how the heads of departments that might implement your service think and feel, and what they say and how they act. Their personas will be very different than those of the people that work in the department and who would actually use your product. Even though these workers may come from very different backgrounds, there will be similarities in how they think and feel and what they say and how they act, because they work within a very specific work culture that rewards certain behaviors and action and discourages others. You should be able to discern these different personas within the marketing segment you are serving based upon all the potential customer interviews you did as described in Sprint 3. Finding personas in your data. Make a list of all the things the people you observed and interviewed indicate would or could make them happy if you implemented your idea. By each of the things listed, put the name or description of all the people that it would make happy. Look for clumps of similarities in the descriptions of the people tied to each of the things listed. These clumps are personas. Continue by looking for patterns of similar desirable things based upon age or group, gender, profession, background, type of business, or any other grouping you think should lead to a different set of needs and desires. How much data do you need to find and properly define a persona? In Sprint 3, we discussed how many interviews you needed to do to feel comfortable that the potential customer group you identified actually might love your idea and give you the confidence and lower the risk to proceed to making your product or service a reality. The numbers discussed should be good enough to confidently split the groups you identified as potential customers into 2 or 3 more detailed personas. You may be able to see a few more potential personas in your analysis, but you'll need to do some additional interviews to get enough understanding of their feelings, actions, thinking, and the thinking of the smaller persona groups. You need at least a dozen examples from your interview group to give you enough detail to identify a specific persona. With a dozen examples, you're going to have the confidence to invest money and time into marketing to them. An example of 2 different personas and the insights they trigger. If you were starting a meal delivery service, persona 1 could be described as busy professional. And their description would be in their 30s, working long hours, wants healthy food fast, doesn't mind paying more for convenience. Persona 2 could be described as health conscious parent. Late 30s to late 40s, has kids, cares about nutrition, wants affordable family meals. Both could be your customers, but what you say to each and the features they care about most and what they're willing to pay for those features might be different. Using this simple example, you might want to estimate how much more persona 1 is willing to pay for your service in order for you to be open later versus the cost of operating longer hours. You would compare that to how much you could save by closing earlier but having to charge lower prices in serving persona 2. You would market your services differently to these 2 personas, perhaps focusing on ads in local papers for persona 2, health-conscious parent, and ads on top of taxi cabs if going after persona 1, busy professional. These are only 2 of many ways you might optimize profits in this business by understanding personas. But the survival and prosperity of a startup of any type will depend on how well you know exactly what will make your initial target persona happy enough to gladly give you their money in return.
Sprint exercise. Now that you've read or listened to our article all about personas, you understand how to use your observations and interviews with potential customers to determine the differences in how certain customer subgroups will think and feel about your product and what they will do with it and say about it. We explained how you find the persona that will be easiest and most profitable to make super happy. Using the data from Sprint 3, you should be able to find at least 2 personas. Capitalize on your findings by documenting your thoughts on the following questions. Describe and define the personas you have identified. Which of these personas do you think would be best to target first, and why? How are you going to modify the description of your launch product or service based upon identifying a first best persona to target?